You've just brushed against poison ivy. You know what's coming: blistering rashes, relentless itching, and days of skin agony. But what if the antidote was already growing right next to it? That's not a myth. That's jewelweed. With bright orange flowers that dangle like tiny spotted lanterns and seed pods that explode at the slightest touch, jewelweed doesn't just look magical, it is magical, especially when you're in trouble. Here's the twist. This plant evolved to grow in the exact same spots as poison ivy: shady, moist, woodland edges, like nature intentionally placed a cure right next to the danger. Scientists call it the natural pharmacy poison dynamic. But indigenous peoples figured this out long before science had a name for it. The moment urushiol, the toxic oil in poison ivy, touches your skin, it begins binding to your proteins. That's what causes the painful allergic reaction. But if you act fast, jewelweed can stop it cold. Its juicy, almost translucent stems are loaded with saponins, natural soap-like compounds that break down the oil before it can lock on. The catch? It only works if the plant is fresh. That's something the Potawatomi, Chippewa, and Omaha tribes understood centuries ago. They didn't boil it, they didn't dry it, they crushed the living stem and applied the slimy mash directly to the skin. And it worked. Recent clinical trials back this up. Over 90% of participants showed significantly reduced symptoms when treated with jewelweed mash within minutes of exposure. Visually, jewelweed is unforgettable. It leaves shimmer like silver when dipped in water, hence the name jewelweed. Its orange flowers are horn-shaped, each spotted like a tiny jungle cat. But the real showstopper? The seed pods. Touch them and they burst open like spring-loaded confetti, flinging seeds in all directions. It's not just fun, it's botanical popcorn. And yes, we absolutely slowed it down for your viewing pleasure. And if you've ever wondered why it's sometimes called touch me not, now you know. It's the plant that fights back. So you're out on a trail, you brush up against some suspicious vines, and you spot jewelweed right there. You've got 5 minutes to act. Pick the stem, crush it, smear it on. That rash? It might never show up. Some antidotes grow beside the poison they're meant to fight. Others take on something far deadlier, like a mushroom that can shut down your liver, and a spiky purple weed that refuses to let it. Every year, thousands of people fall victim to one of nature's most terrifying killers, the death cap mushroom. Just a single bite can shut down your liver within hours. No antidote, no second chance. Or so we thought. Until milk thistle entered the story. That spiky purple-flowered plant isn't just a folk remedy. It's the only plant with clinical proof of saving lives from Amanita phalloides poisoning, the deadliest mushroom on Earth. And this isn't just herbal folklore. In European hospitals, doctors actually use IV milk thistle extract to treat mushroom poisoning. The key ingredient is silibinin, a compound that acts like a molecular bodyguard. It gets to your liver cells first and blocks the toxins from getting inside. Those toxins normally destroy an enzyme your liver can't live without. No enzyme, no liver, no second chances. But silibinin buys you time, critical, life-saving time. In documented cases, it's reversed the course of death even after the worst exposure. In Santa Cruz, 4 people poisoned by wild mushrooms walked out of the hospital without needing transplants thanks to IV silibinin. Without milk thistle, death cap mushroom fatalities hover around 50%. With it, that number drops below 10. That's not herbal folklore, that's hospital-grade survival. And this isn't a rare rainforest species. Milk thistle grows almost everywhere across North America, the UK, Canada, and Australia. Chances are you've driven past it on the highway without giving it a second glance. Its leaves look like they've been splashed with white paint. Legend says those marks are from the Virgin Mary's milk, hence the name. Each plant is topped with a large, spiky purple flower straight out of a medieval botanical illustration. You couldn't design a more striking antidote if you tried. The seeds are where the magic is. That's where silibinin concentrates. In emergencies, it's administered intravenously, but for daily detox, those same seeds are turned into capsules and standardized extracts. And the kicker? Milk thistle is incredibly safe. Even at high doses, side effects are rare and mild, usually limited to a bit of stomach upset. Compared to liver failure, that's not a bad trade. When you hear antidote, you might think syringes, hazmat suits, and antidote kits in spy thrillers. But sometimes the real hero is a spiky roadside weed with purple flowers and a reputation built on saving lives. One plant blocks a mushroom's lethal march to the liver. The next goes head-to-head with something just as deadly, snake venom. And somehow, it's been hiding in your spice rack all along. You feel the puncture before you see it. A flash of movement in the brush, 2 small holes just above your ankle. Then the burn starts. Your leg begins to swell. Panic sets in. You're hours from help, and the venom is already moving. In parts of the world where snakes strike faster than ambulances arrive, there's one thing people reach for, and it's not a syringe. It's a root, bright orange, stained with earth, sliced from the ground like a lifeline. Turmeric. Long before science had a name for it, villagers in Thailand and India knew turmeric was more than a spice. Mixed with alcohol and poured over snake bites, it calmed swelling. Taken as a hot drink, it bought people time. The kind of time you need when you're racing death. Turns out turmeric is packing serious firepower. Inside that bright orange root are compounds that don't just reduce swelling, they actually slow down venom. The first is curcumin. It blocks an enzyme called hyaluronidase, the one that venom uses to tear through tissue and spread fast. Lab test shows curcumin cuts its activity by more than 90%. Then there's R-turmerone, named after turmeric itself. This one targets another venom enzyme called phospholipase A2. That's the stuff responsible for muscle damage, paralysis, even organ failure. R-turmerone reduces venom lethality by 70% and, more importantly, buys you 2 to 3 extra hours to get help. That might not sound like much, but in the middle of nowhere, bitten and running out of time, that's not extra time, that's life. The traditional method was crude but effective. Powder mixed with warm water, half poured over the bite, the rest swallowed like fire. In survival terms, it's one of the few natural treatments that actually slows the venom down internally and externally. It's not a replacement for antivenom, but it may be the only reason you ever reach a hospital. And it's not some rare jungle secret. Turmeric grows across South and Southeast Asia in the very regions where deadly snakes roam. Its green leaves shoot up like torches in the monsoon heat, and below, its root runs deep, vivid orange, gnarled, potent. Cut it open and it bleeds color. Dry it and you get the powder sitting in your kitchen right now. What that powder contains is survival chemistry, a botanical suit of armor grown in mud and sun. For thousands of years, it was used in ceremonies and medicine alike, painted on skin, stirred into tea, pressed into wounds. Modern science is only now catching up to its full power, but villagers never needed a study to know turmeric saves lives. Next up, we have a bright purple flower once used to fight rabies and venom, and now, it turns out, it may be your best defense against viruses, infections, and immune collapse. It didn't come from a lab. It came from watching elk. Wounded elk, limping through prairie grass, would seek out a strange purple flower, bite off the tops, chew the roots. The Sioux took note. They called it elk root, and it became their antidote for venom, infection, and even rabies long before microscopes or medical journals. That flower? Echinacea. With its backward-swept pink petals and spiky orange cone, Echinacea looks like it belongs in a wildflower bouquet. But for centuries, it was more battlefield medicine than garden decor. The immune system wasn't even a known concept, yet tribes across the Great Plains used Echinacea to draw sickness out of the body, and now science finally knows how they did it. Because Echinacea doesn't just support the immune system, it charges it. Its roots and flowers are packed with alkaloids, polysaccharides, and caffeic acid derivatives, compounds that trigger the body's natural killer cells, boost macrophage, and enhance antibody production. In other words, it tells your body to stop playing defense and start swinging. That's why it wasn't just used for bites and infections. It was the emergency fallback when nothing else worked. And astonishingly, it shows up in early medical kits from both world wars, used when supplies ran out and infection was a death sentence. Echinacea extract was carried into battle not as a supplement, but as a last resort. Modern studies have only deepened the story. One major review found it could cut the chance of getting sick by nearly a quarter. But where it really shines is in detox. Those same compounds that fire up your white blood cells also kick your lymphatic system into overdrive, helping flush out venom, bacteria, and viral debris before they get a foothold. It's not just defense, it's a full body purge. And the plant itself? It's pure visual power. Echinacea purpurea stands tall and commanding, with long, slender leaves and a blazing pink or purple daisy-like flower. The central cone is covered in stiff, orange-tipped bristles like nature's own armor. The rough texture isn't just for show, it signals resilience, durability, survival. It thrives in poor soil, shrugs off drought, and blooms through late summer when other plants wilt. It's the botanical equivalent of a fighter, always ready, always adapting. So while others walk past that spiky purple bloom without a second glance, you'll know better. It's not just a wildflower, it's an ancient signal flare for your immune system. Some remedies hide in plain sight. Others grow low to the ground, half crushed by foot traffic, waiting for someone who knows what they're looking at. Let's talk about the plant that turns sidewalks into survival kits. Most people step right over it. A scrappy little plant clinging to cracks in the pavement, trampled by sneakers and bike tires. It looks like a weed, but it's not. It's a portable first aid kit and one of the most underrated survival tools on Earth. This is Plantain, not the banana, but Plantango major, a tough, broad-leaved green that thrives anywhere the soil has been disturbed. Driveways, hiking trails, abandoned lots, it follows people, quietly waiting for someone who knows what it can do. And what it can do is a lot. Let's say you slice your hand open on a sharp rock, or a bee stings you and the pain starts pulsing, or you feel the beginning of a skin infection from a dirty scrape. If you've got plantain nearby, you've got options. You grab a few leaves, chew them into a pulp, and press the mash directly onto the wound. That crude little mixture? It works. Indigenous peoples did this instinctively. Modern science now knows why. Plantain is packed with allantoin, a cell regenerator that tells skin to start rebuilding. It also contains aucubin, a potent antimicrobial, and plantamogicide, which fights inflammation like a natural steroid. Together, these compounds clean, soothe, and heal. Clinical trials have shown wounds heal 64% faster with plantain than without it. But the real magic is how accessible it is. You don't need a tincture, you don't need boiling water. You just chew it, spit, and press. It's called a spit poultice, and while the name isn't glamorous, it's been saving skin in the field for centuries. Visually, it's easy to recognize once you know the signs. Look for flat, oval leaves growing in a tight rosette pattern, each leaf lined with parallel veins that run from base to tip like a rib cage. The flower spikes shoot straight up like green candles, often overlooked, but full of seeds. It's low, it's tough, and it's always nearby, especially in places where people tend to get injured. Some plants grow in pristine forests, rare and untouchable. Others grow underfoot in plain view, daring you to notice them. The next one is even more unassuming, bark from a tree that once grew in swamps and fevers and quietly rewrote the rules of modern medicine. At some point in history, someone looked at a tree and thought, yeah, I'm going to chew that. Maybe it was desperation, maybe it was instinct, maybe they just lost a bet. But whoever bit into that bitter strip of willow bark started something big. The setting? A cold, fever-soaked swamp in 18th century England. Locals were plagued by agues, the kind of lingering fevers that drained you for days. Medicine was more guesswork than cure, and yet the people who gnawed on willow bark, they seemed to get better faster. Less pain, fewer chills, a little more strength. One of them, Reverend Edward Stone, didn't just chew, he tested, dried the bark, ground it into powder, and gave it to patients with fevers. In 1763, he wrote to the Royal Society describing its effects. The bark of the willow, he said, to be a powerful astringent and very efficacious in curing ague. And that quiet observation sparked a medical revolution. Inside willow bark was a compound named salicin. French chemists isolated it, Italian scientists transformed it, and eventually a man named Felix Hoffmann at Bayer turned it into something synthetic. Aspirin. Cheap, effective, and available everywhere. But while aspirin became the icon, willow never lost its original power. Because willow bark works differently. Where aspirin targets one inflammatory pathway, willow affects several. It's gentler too. The bark contains flavonoids and tannins that buffer its action and reduce the risk of stomach irritation, a common side effect of synthetic aspirin. And in studies, drinking a few cups of willow bark tea, enough to get 240 milligrams of salicin, relieved pain just like the meds you'd buy at a pharmacy. But this isn't just about headache relief. Willow bark was used for toothaches, arthritis, lower back pain, even labor contractions. It was carried into battle by medics, brewed in village kitchens, and trusted by herbalists from Europe to North America. Native American tribes like the Cherokee and Blackfoot used it long before Reverend Stone ever picked up a pen. And the tree itself? It's a thing of quiet beauty. White willow and black willow both grow tall and slender, their leaves long and narrow with a silvery underside that shimmers in the breeze. The bark is ridged, often marked by deep vertical grooves. Crack a twig and the scent is sharp, almost peppery. It doesn't scream for attention, it just stands there by the water's edge, ready. Today, aspirin is everywhere, on pharmacy shelves, in emergency kits, and in daily routines for millions of people. And maybe some of you watching take it every morning without thinking twice. But behind that little tablet is a tree, and behind the tree is a story of observation, trial, error, and quiet genius. In the swamps where people suffered most, the cure had already taken root. The next plant doesn't look like medicine, it looks like a garden ornament, gold petals, cheerful bloom, soft fragrance. But underneath that brightness is a healing process so fast, it outpaces hospital-grade treatment. Toxic when raw, life-saving when cooked. Few plants walk that line as dramatically as elderberry. Clusters of delicate white flowers in spring, deep purple-black berries in late summer. It looks harmless, even inviting. But eat those berries straight off the branch and you're in for nausea, cramps, maybe worse. The raw fruit contains cyanogenic glycosides, compounds that release cyanide when digested. So why on earth would anyone take a risk on this plant? Because once it's properly prepared, elderberry becomes one of nature's most powerful antiviral weapons. During World War I and II, when pharmaceutical supplies ran low, elderberry syrup was packed into soldiers' kits to fight off respiratory infections. Not because it was gentle, because it worked. It's not just folklore anymore. Elderberry's ability to fight viruses has been confirmed in modern labs. Inside those dark purple berries are compounds that block viruses from attaching to your cells. No attachment, no infection. In lab tests, elderberry extracts slashed viral activity by as much as 95%. That's not immune support, That's immune interception. It works especially well against the flu and may even slow down certain coronaviruses. Clinical trials show it doesn't just help you recover fast, it actually softens the blow. Fewer symptoms, less inflammation, shorter downtime. But here's what makes it fascinating. It only works when it's handled right. Raw elderberries are toxic. They contain a compound that can release cyanide. But boil them just a few minutes and the danger disappears. What's left is a rich, immune-boosting syrup that's been used for generations. Across Europe and North America, elderberry was part of folk medicine, plague cures, and seasonal rituals. It was brewed into tonics, fermented into wine, pressed into poultices. And even now, you'll find standardized elderberry extracts in pharmacies, backed by modern dosing guidelines and clinical studies. What was once homemade is now hospital approved. The best part? Elderberry grows almost everywhere. Hedgerows, forest edges, roadside clearings, which means if you ever find yourself facing illness without access to medicine, the tree with the toxic fruit might just be the one that saves you. The next antidote looks like sunshine in bloom. You've seen it in gardens, maybe even picked one without thinking. But it's not just a pretty flower, it's been quietly outperforming modern wound care for centuries. At first glance, it just looks cheerful. A bright orange flower glowing under the sun somewhere between a daisy and a marigold. It blooms easily, smells sweet, and has a name that sounds like a spell, Calendula. But this isn't just a garden charmer. This is the flower that turns wounds into afterthoughts. Calendula's healing power isn't subtle. In one clinical trial, mothers recovering from C-sections were split into two groups. One used calendula ointment, the other used standard care. By day 8, 90% of the calendula group had complete wound closure. The control group, just 51%. That's not just a slight improvement, that's a biological fast-forward button. Why? Because calendula is packed with compounds that tell your skin to start rebuilding fast. It boosts the cells that form new tissue, helps grow tiny blood vessels, and speeds up the final stage of healing, where skin cells close the wound from the edges inward. And it doesn't stop there. Calendula also brings in flavonoids to calm inflammation, saponins to fight infection, and carotenoids for antioxidant protection. It's like a full healing team packed into a single flower. And yet, it's so easy to miss. Calendula grows quietly in gardens and roadsides, often mistaken for ornamental marigolds. But look closer and you'll notice its secret language. The flowers close at night or when clouds roll in, like living solar panels conserving energy. They're slightly sticky to the touch, with a fragrance somewhere between herbal tea and sunshine. It's been used for centuries, by Romans to dress wounds, by medieval surgeons to stop bleeding, and by herbalists in every era since. Poultices, infusions, balms, and tinctures, calendula has been pressed into every form, always with the same goal: close the wound, calm the pain, prevent the scar. Today, calendula appears in everything from baby creams to surgical recovery kits. But don't be fooled by the soft labels. Behind those orange petals is one of nature's most effective wound healers, proven to work faster and gentler than many synthetic treatments. Calendula thrives in warmth and sunlight. The next plant chooses a different path. It blooms when the world goes cold and still manages to bring relief where other remedies fall short. Everything else has gone quiet. Leaves have fallen, branches are bare, and winter is pressing in. But one spindly little tree refuses to shut down. Instead, it bursts into bloom, thread-like yellow petals curling like tiny flames against a frozen sky. This is witch hazel, and its timing is no accident. It's one of the few North American shrubs that blooms in late fall or winter, sending out its wiry yellow petals when everything else is dormant. And when it's done flowering, it doesn't quietly drop its seeds, it explodes them. Literally, the plant's woody capsules dry and twist until they launch seeds like tiny bullets up to 30 feet away. Visually, it's hard to miss once you know what to look for. A modest shrub, often tangled, with zigzagging branches and those spidery yellow flowers clinging through frost. It doesn't grow tall, it doesn't grow loud, but it holds a kind of quiet defiance. Long before commercial creams and cooling gels, indigenous tribes across North America turned to witch hazel as a frontline remedy. It soothed burns, stopped bleeding, shrunk swelling, and it did it using chemistry that still baffles modern dermatologists. Witch hazel works because its bark and twigs are loaded with compounds that fight inflammation at the source. One of them blocks the chemical signals that trigger redness, pain, and swelling. Another group, called tannins, tightens skin and constricts blood vessels, helping wounds close faster. In studies, witch hazel reduced skin redness by more than 25% and even calmed the same enzyme pathways triggered by snake venom and allergic reactions. This isn't just skin soothing, it's a reset switch for irritation. That's why the FDA approved it for over-the-counter use, and why it still shows up in burn gels, hemorrhoid creams, and post-shave products. It works fast, gently, and without the side effects of harsher meds. But not every antidote comes from roots and flowers. The last one starts as wood or coconut shell, burned, blackened, and crushed. What's left behind isn't pretty, but it's powerful enough to trap poison mid-flight. It doesn't grow, it doesn't bloom, it doesn't smell like herbs or look good in a garden. In fact, it starts out as waste, burnt coconut shells, charred hardwood, blackened plant matter that's been reduced to nothing but carbon and ash. And yet, this is where nature delivers one of its most powerful antidotes. And we've known it for a long time. Ancient Egyptians used charcoal to filter water and preserve the dead. Hippocrates prescribed it for treating illness. And in 1813, a French chemist named Bertrand took things to the extreme. He swallowed a lethal dose of arsenic along with a hefty amount of activated charcoal, and he survived, just to prove a point. Activated charcoal isn't just soot. It's charcoal that's been treated to create a structure of microscopic pores so dense, so intricate, that a single teaspoon has the surface area of a football field. Yes, you heard that right, a football field, from just 1 teaspoon. Here's how it works. Most toxins, drugs, alcohol, pesticides, even venom compounds have positive charges or polar molecules. Activated charcoal has the opposite, an ultraporous, negatively charged surface. When the two meet, they bind. Fast, permanently. The poison sticks to the charcoal and exits the body without ever being absorbed into the bloodstream. That's not theory, it's field-tested reality. When given within the first hour of ingestion, activated charcoal can reduce toxin absorption by up to 74%. In emergencies, doctors use it to counteract overdoses of everything from acetaminophen to opioids. It's even listed on the World Health Organization's list of essential medicines. And yet, despite its medical power, it's made from plants. Coconut shells, burnt hardwood, bamboo. Activated charcoal is what happens when nature's leftovers are re-engineered into something life-saving. But there's a catch. The stuff you find in health food stores, tablets and powders labeled detox, usually contains tiny doses. A typical tablet, 250 milligrams. A medical dose, 50 to 100 grams. You'd need 200 tablets to match what's used in an emergency room. So yes, activated charcoal is real medicine, but only when used at the right scale and in the right moment. So much of modern medicine began right here. Leaves, bark, roots, and even ashes. What looks like folklore at first is often just science waiting for a microscope. These aren't superfoods or supplements, they're survival tools. Some sit in forests. Others grow through sidewalk cracks. A few are already in your home. But now you know what they really are. Antidotes. Nature didn't just create the danger, it left the cure behind too. You just have to know where to look. Any that we missed? Let us know in the comments. This is Stellar Eureka signing off.